Welcome, Aaron. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Chair, you're ready to start whenever the stream is live now.
Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the summertime meeting of the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee. We only have one meeting in the months of July and August, and we've had some difficulty in finding a time that's suitable for everybody. I'd like to thank those people that did come out to our ad hoc committee meetings. It's nice to see that we have quorum this morning or this evening. I'll get it right yet. And I'd like to welcome members of the public if there are any. I'm calling this meeting to order. The first item on your agenda is the disclosure of interest. Is there anybody that has a pecuniary interest in any of the matters on the agenda today? If so, can you please so indicate? I don't see any indication. So we'll move on to the next item, which is the approval of the agenda. Has everybody reviewed the agenda? Will someone move that the agenda be approved? Can I have a mover? Haley? A seconder? Ryan? I guess I got to read that. Resolved that the August the 11th, 2021 Grimsby Green Advisory Committee meeting agenda be approved. All in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. That carries. Now, I'd like your approval to change the agenda order. Bruce has indicated that he has to leave us by about 7 o'clock. So I'd like to move up item number 8 to be the first item that we discuss, if that's okay. And then move to item number 9, both of which are matters that Bruce is interested in and wants to address. So Bruce, the floor is yours, first on item 8, and then you could move to item 9.
Thanks, Carl. And if you can just give me 1 second, I have a small technical matter. Oh, okay, can you hear me all right there, Carl?
I can.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for your considerations. I appreciate that. And for moving the agenda item forward. And I hope to stay with the meeting as long as I can. So the agenda item has to do with grass cutting in the town. And I'm hoping that all of you have received a note that I had previously sent in to Carl and Sarah earlier in the process when I asked for this agenda item to be placed.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Chair. I'm sorry, Bruce. I thought that we were moving to item 8, which is preservation of mature trees and the tree inventory and policies, and grass cutting is number 10 on the agenda.
All right.
First, it was my understanding that item number 8, you wanted to defer to October's meeting. Maybe you can just address that first.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't have the agenda up in front of me, Carl. And so item 8, the tree inventory. Excuse me, I'm just having the Bob Friesen, a resident of the Grimsby Beach community. He had been working on a inventory diligently on the Grimsby Beach area to supply that work to the Grimsby Beach study. And Bob and I have been in communication certainly about this work. And Bob was hoping to bring his presentation to this committee for this meeting. Bob, unfortunately, is away for this meeting, and I am away for the September meeting. So I'm asking if item 8, a report on tree inventory in the town, could be delayed until the October meeting.
Bruce, does that include item I, which is the tree inventory group, and triple I, the policies component of item number 8? It's all of 8 you want considered at the October meeting, is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
So I would support that motion if you want to do a defer on that item, or defer that item to October on the agenda.
Does anybody have a problem with that? Peter, do we need a resolution on that?
Through you, Chair, it's probably best, I think you have your mover, Councillor Bothwell, that those 3 items be deferred to the October meeting, and if we could take a vote on that.
Could I have a seconder then? Moved by Councillor Bothwell, seconded by Ryan.
Sorry, was the tags one as well, item 9I, supposed to be deferred, or is that going to be discussed this evening, Bruce?
And the item 9 item, Dorothy, that was?
Commemorative tree program tags, or is that?
No, that's not part of what I was
Okay.
referring to.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. So all good. Yep.
So we have a motion to defer consideration of item 8 in its entirety to the October meeting. All in favor? Carries. Then, Bruce, we're going to move to item number 10, which is the grass cutting discussion.
Thank you, Chair Carl. So as I was mentioning a minute ago, a note had been distributed to the members of the committee a while back. I hope members have been able to review that, and I'd be glad to entertain any questions that members may have. And I'd just like to sort of paraphrase my note in that my intentions were sort of 2 parts. One was for the town to examine grass mowing on town property as it stands today, where in schedules, and to really come up with an as a percentage of what amount mowing. And the other part of my message was that the town would encourage other property owners in the town of Grimsby, that being residences and business, to review the amount of area that of grass that is mowed. And I think we're all well attuned to the positive aspects of reducing mowing for the benefit of various aspects of environmental arguments or bones for the environment. So, as I say, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to discuss points that members may wish to raise.
I know your email was shared with Sarah, and unfortunately, she's not here. Trevor is here in her stead. Trevor, have you got any thoughts on the initiative?
So I have not seen the email that was circulated by Bruce. I did have a brief discussion with Sarah this afternoon about it. I'm not sure about the initiative in terms of, an engagement piece about the benefits of mowing less, and that's certainly something we could explore. But she had mentioned perhaps looking into cutting less or not cutting certain areas of town maintained property. Bruce, is that correct?
I've started this discussion with Sarah 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I have sent her messages. I have not had a discussion with her other than in the spring, a short discussion when I asked her about her feelings about my message. She said she would discuss it with staff. I have not heard the results of any discussions with staff. And
So I think what Sarah was hoping to start with is perhaps for a meeting to happen with staff, perhaps with you or with other members as needed, and identify a few locations to pilot that initiative. I think when we're looking at that in terms of location, there's a number of things to consider, whether it's usability of the space. Obviously, ticks are a concern. So finding spaces that are suitable for that, perhaps working with staff to identify those and piloting the initiative, and then looking towards perhaps something more from there.
well, staff can take it to whichever degree they wish, and I'd be only happy to discuss with them. In addressing the members of this committee, I think it's one of the initiatives that the committee could look at in terms of whether it wants to endorse an objective in terms of grass mowing. And I'm hoping that the committee may recommend an objective as to how the town may look at grass mowing on its properties now. If the town does not take the initiative in reducing grass mowing and how often grass is mowed and with what machinery, electric versus gas mowing, and I think that's a separate discussion. Then we can't really expect the members of the community, the residences and the businesses, to be able to follow an example led by the town. And the way I look at grass mowing on public property is if it's not being used for a particular purpose, and the purposes can be wide-ranging, then why is the grass being mowed? And then a couple of specific situations, which I think should be easy for staff to identify, is steep slopes. They are hazardous to the staff to mow. I have 40 years of experience managing conservation areas, and it was back in the 70s when we started at the Hamilton Conservation Authority, at least, in reducing our mowed areas. And the first areas we pulled back on were hazardous slopes. And the town does cut some hazardous slopes. As a general percentage of the area mowed, it's small. But for the safety of the staff and to set an example again for the other members of the community, I'd like to recommend that steep slopes not be mowed. The next other one that I think is a low-hanging fruit is cutting near shorelines and riparian areas. Those areas are not being used by the public, but we're all concerned about water quality, whether it's in Lake Ontario. That's where our drinking water is coming from. We read about blue-green algae in paper every day almost in different water bodies. The riparian areas and shorelines are very important. And if you leave the grass unmowed, those areas become naturalized and help to contain nutrients and sediments from flowing into the waters. So those are two areas that, as I say, are low-hanging fruit, easy for the town to look at and stop mowing. And then there's other areas which are mowed, which nobody may ever walk on. And I understand, Trevor, as well as anybody, and to town staff, the consideration of ticks now. And I'm not recommending that the trails or the busy areas go right up to the unmowed areas. I'm simply suggesting or recommending that the town review areas where the grass is mowed. And I look forward to, as I hope the other members of this committee do, look forward to hearing back from town staff as to a plan as to how grass mowing can be reduced in Grimsby. And then the second thing, of course, that's important is the program that the town may recommend or brag about, if I may use this term, as to how it's reducing its grass cutting for X benefits, and asking members of the community to reduce the amount of grass that is mowed on their properties. So I'm repeating myself now, and I'll put it back to the chair as to where this might go next.
Okay, Bruce, responding to you, I support an initiative which involves looking at the town's policies and practices. And you've cited two examples, steep slopes and shorelines, but I think they need to review all of their policies and practices, and with a view to minimizing grass cutting. And I heard Trevor suggest that the first step might be a meeting between yourself and Sarah, or I would suggest maybe you want to make a motion that the town review its policies and practices with regard to grass cutting, or some other resolution that you want the committee to support. I personally support what you're trying to do. I sometimes wonder why they cut the grass in the ditch in front of my house, but I'm sure there's a reason for it. I think it would be helpful to know what that is.
Well, Chair Carl, what I'd like to suggest, and with Sarah being not here tonight, and I appreciate that, and I'm not here for September's meeting, but I would be more than happy to meet with Sarah and or who else she likes to bring to such a meeting to help sort out any question of definitions or intentions. I think that's only fair to the process, and I thank Trevor for bringing that forward. I would also, though, ask that if I was to have a meeting with staff about grass mowing, that it has more involvement than just parks, recreation, and cultural. It also involves public works. As many of the things that we discuss at the Green Committee, it's not a Parks and Rec ball game alone. Public Works manages properties in the town. So I would ask through you, Trevor, or Chair Carl, that a note be made in the minutes that I would welcome a meeting with staff from Sarah's department, Sarah and her delegates as she would like, and also delegate from Public Works. Otherwise, we're going to be doing this twice. And the timing is good for this because I do not see any changes to anything this year, not asking for any this year. Most of the grass cutting is complete. There'll be some more in the fall. If this committee was successful in having a template laid out before next grass season starts, that would be a good objective, because some parts of the grass mowing involves contractors that the town hires. And I think it's imperative that the town look at its grass cutting initiatives or program before any contract is begun in the new year for mowing, and also where the town wants to. So it involves parks and recreation, it involves public works, and it involves third parties who might be hired to cut grass in the town of Grimsby. So
If I could interject here, Carl, Chair, sorry.
Go ahead.
On Bruce's I think what would move this would be a motion to, well, first of all, I agree with Bruce that it impacts not just rec services, but public works, and grass cutting is quite different on the mountain versus the urban below the mountain. The grass cutting in the ditches and stuff is sometimes required in order to maintain proper stormwater flow, etc. So there's issues with regard to that, as well as you mentioned the contract status that we currently have for grass cutting is another factor. And property standards and public perception are other key issues about, what is the town doing? Why is the town letting its certain areas, be let go when property standards requires homeowners to maintain their property when, with a certain height of grass, et cetera, whatever, and no weeds. So there's a whole bunch of things that come into play, and maybe a motion just to request that staff report back to the Grimsby Green that Parks and Rec and Public Works staff report on the current policies and procedures for grass cutting within the town of Grimsby and any contractual arrangements for further discussion at the next meeting, and have them come back with a report on what we currently do, what the costs are currently, and what the service levels are. And then from there, we're able to then maybe look at, like you suggested, reducing certain areas that may not require the same level of attention, Bruce. So I think a motion to have staff provide a report on what we're currently doing will help us then define where you want to go with it from there and what our costs currently are for those contracted services. Does that make sense?
I think Bruce, you're not going to be at the next meeting, right? So
or for October or whatever, like,
Oh,
yeah, 'cause
it
staff,
would be-
staff will need time to do it anyway.
right. That was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, for sure.
October will give them more time. I don't know if we need to make it as comprehensive as you are outlining, but I get the gist of it. How do you feel about a resolution like that, Bruce?
Fine, and I'd be more than happy to move that for a report from staff to come back for the October meeting, outlining what Councillor Bothwell said, a review of the town policies, land standards, and mowing areas, and also timing and contractors. By timing, I mean the cycle of grass mowing.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
I can second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? Carries. And Peter, I assume I assume we're going to write that one up after the meeting. Peter, are you there? Okay, I'll move along.
I think we lost Peter temporarily.
Okay, then I think we need to go back to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the selection of a vice chair. We currently don't have a vice chair. I think I'll just kick it off by asking if there are any volunteers to be vice chair. I think the way it works is that the chairman can only be chair for a certain period of time, and the way it usually works is that the vice chair automatically becomes chair when the incumbent, when his time frame is up. So if you volunteer to be a vice chair, I think you have to count on being the chairman down the road. Not always the rule, but usually that's the way it is. Do we have anybody that is interested in being vice chair? Any volunteers?
Sorry, Carl, I think that the terms of reference outlines how the chair position will be, and I don't think it's an automatic that the vice chair will roll into the chair position. It is open annually at the first meeting each year. So I wouldn't assume
Yeah, I
that the
know.
vice chair has to take that on. So I think if for those who are hesitant on it, there isn't necessarily a commitment to move into the chair position. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, I tried to water down the first part of that statement. Anyways, do we have any volunteers?
Everybody's got their hand up. Can't you see that, Carl? I can see everybody's hand up on the screen. Maybe it's just my imagination.
I can't see your hand, and I can't see Dave Sharp's hand. In fact, I haven't even heard Dave say a word yet.
Is that Dave Sharp or is that Dave Cadwell?
That's Dave Cadwell. I'm sorry, Dave
Okay.
Cadwell.
So he would just be listening in as a non-member. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to nominate.
Chair Carl, it's Bruce, if I may. I'm not volunteering at this time. What I might suggest is, because some of the members of this committee are not with us tonight, and some of those members are new, possibly with the minutes meeting or a separate email from yourself, all the members of the committee, inviting them to entertain the idea of becoming vice chair, for them to take a little time to consider that, and that and put out a timeline that at the September meeting, we're going to have an election for a vice chair. Not putting words in your mouth, just making a suggestion. And to be fair to those members of the committee that are not with us tonight, that would give them an equal opportunity to step forward. So just throwing that out there.
Any discussion on that?
I'm good with deferring that item then. So I would just do a deferral of item 4, selection of vice chair, to the September meeting. And meanwhile, you can just go and give people the heads up to think about it in an email, Carl. I think that would make sense.
Okay, I will do it. But I should point out that our 2 new members are here tonight. Henry and Aaron are both here. I can see their faces. I think Chantel's the only one missing it, isn't she? Chantel and Dave Sharp.
Well, then maybe we could nominate Chantel as vice chair.
I'll second that.
She's not here.
She might like a surprise.
We can't do that in absentia, can we?
Oh, okay.
I was impressed with Chantel, because she attended both the tree planting ad hoc group and the Green Acknowledgement Award Committee. She attended both of those, so her heart's in the right place. But I don't think you should nominate people in absentia. So I agree.
My apologies, Chair Carl.
It's okay. I was going to nominate you, Bruce.
Well, thank you very much, but I'm just going to leave that alone for the time being. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Okay, well, then I have a motion from Councillor Bothwell, I guess it was, to defer it to the next meeting, and that the chairman sent out a letter asking for interested parties to let me know, and that the decision will be made at the next meeting. So that's generally the motion. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yep,
Ryan,
I support that.
any further discussion on it? All in favor? That carries. Okay, so item number 5 is the terms of reference on the agenda. Hopefully Peter's back. Peter Todd, are you there? Can you speak to this item? You said the terms of reference that are attached to our agenda are the incorrect ones. I guess Trevor's going to answer that question.
I think we lost Peter again, but I can answer that. Yes, the terms of reference that appear to be attached to the agenda were not the updated terms of reference. So I believe Sarah was hoping to defer this to the next meeting.
Can I make a request that when we do get them on the next agenda, that the changes be outlined in yellow or somehow identified so we don't have to compare the one that we were given when we joined the committee with the new one? So it'll be easier for us to go through it. I take it we're not being asked to approve them, right? We're just being asked to read them and be aware of them. Is that correct? Like, in other words, why are they being sent to this committee other than for information?
I'd have to check with Peter or Sarah, but I do believe they need to be approved.
Sorry,
Okay.
Chair, considering the item, the attachment is incorrect and we've received the wrong information, we can't act on it tonight. So I think it needs to be noted in the minutes that the terms of reference attached is incorrect in the wrong version, and that the item is being deferred to the next meeting for the correct terms of reference to be provided to the committee.
And I'll make that a motion.
I'm just gonna, sorry, Carl, I'm gonna bring Peter up to speed here because he was just off the meeting there. Peter, are you there?
Yes, sorry about that. I'm back on.
Peter, so the terms of reference that were included in the agenda were incorrect. They were the old terms of reference.
Mhm.
I think Carl's just working on a motion to defer that and the wording to note that that shouldn't be moved on.
Yeah, I think that's probably the correct wording, that the item be deferred to, I guess, September's meeting, and that it will.
And apparently it's coming.
Peter, yeah.
Apparently it's coming back to the committee for approval, and I've asked that the new correct version could be highlighted where the changes are so we don't have to review the whole thing.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I don't think that necessarily needs to be included in the motion, but I think staff have heard your direction and we'll be sure to include that.
Okay, so you're saying we don't need a resolution?
Just for that specific level of detail. I think the motion to defer the item to the next meeting, that is needed.
Sorry, Chair, I'm uncomfortable with just deferring it. I'd like to have the rationale that the terms of reference were incorrect that were attached, because I think it's important that we do note that we didn't have something to work on at this meeting.
I
It's not
agree.
just being, it's not just being deferred, the item, it's actually the wrong item. So I think needs to be very clear that we were not provided with the correct terms of reference.
Yes,
Thank
through you, Chair. Sorry, I apologize. I meant to include that level of detail, but not including the indicating the changes in the next edition. I think staff have got the direction. We'll be sure to include that, but we will include that this was the incorrect version and that the items being deferred for that reason, and we'll include it on the next agenda.
Okay, that's a motion by Councillor Bothwell, I believe. Can I have a seconder? Henry? Any discussion? All in favor? That carries. So the next item is the report of the ad hoc committee on the tree planting program or event. And the leader on that was Councillor Sharp. And since the Dave in my box is Councillor Cadwell, we don't have a Councillor Sharp here to present the report. I did attach Councillor Sharp's notes, but in his absence, I don't believe that we can adequately discuss that today. Any thoughts by anybody else? Councillor Sharp's notes are on page 6 of the agenda. And he was to do some further research and report back to this committee this evening. So I believe that we don't really have a choice, but we have to defer this to the September meeting as well. Chantel was the other person that, besides myself, that attended that meeting.
I'll support that motion, Carl, to defer again. It's unfortunate that we're finding we have a whole lot of deferrals on this agenda, and we're not able to action a whole lot of things here tonight. So, but this is another one, as you say, that it's going to have to wait.
Yeah, there was a fair amount of important research that Dave was doing that, for whatever reason, he's not here tonight to report on. So I think if we did anything tonight, we'd have to repeat it in September anyway. So we might as well defer it to the September meeting, and we'll deal with it at one time. So I have a resolution to defer this item to the September meeting. Do I have moved by Councillor Bothwell? Can I have a seconder? Ryan, any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. The next item then is the Green Acknowledgement Awards. The subcommittee notes you will find on page, I would think, page 7 of your agenda. And the leader on this item was Haley Bankhurst. And I'd like to call on Haley to give us a brief overview of her notes.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, so I was just going to kind of go through the minutes that I sent out. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look at them, because we kind of split the discussions up into different categories. So So the first thing we discussed was examples of local environmental stewardship in the area. The first one was Bench Brewing Company, which have just received a certification for being carbon neutral. So they went through this whole program, and we did a bit of research into what that program was. And it's basically a training and certification program for all businesses of any size. And so we were going to look in to see if anyone else in the area, specifically Grimsby, had either started the certification program or already has it. And we just haven't heard about it. And then the other stewardship items that were discussed were things like the Grimsby Wetland Nature Reserve. There was some youth that made birdhouses. There's a couple of restaurants in Grimsby that use cardboard recycling, takeout containers, and then a couple of businesses that always offer to email receipts instead of printing them. So there's those types of initiatives that we were thinking would be the recipients of these awards. So then we looked into the different categories. We came up with 5 different types, which we can discuss various options of those. So we had business stewardship, specifically looking at reducing their own ecological footprint. Then we had community stewardship, any type of waste reduction, tree planting. Then planning and development, any developers that are looking at smart designs and green spaces, reducing their energy emissions, anything like that. Then youth as a specific category. So anything like the birdhouses that went into the wetlands, recycling, any school projects. And then the last one was an idea that came up to include government. So it could be the hospital, school boards, municipality, conservation. And then we talked about 2 different levels of awards. One was for the larger long-term projects to receive an environmental award, and then also to include environmental stars, which would be for the smaller type projects and maybe projects that could lead into something bigger. Then we talked about the procedure itself of how we would need to advertise, the type of application that would need to come in, trying to keep it simple, just to include like a 500-word document about the program or initiative, when it started, the results of that, any supporting videos or photos. And then the suggestion of the nominees list going out into the local newspaper or social media for the public to vote, and then for the committee to also vote on that. We discussed that with Sarah as to whether the procedure would need to go through council, and if it's something more formal, then it would need to go through council for approval all the way. But if it's something more informal, then that's something we could just do. Then we talked about timing. There were 3 different options for timing. We talked about doing some awards in the fall this year, for Earth Day next year, or both. And so there's also an idea of using this year just to come up with some teaser awards. So maybe that's something we can find initiatives ourselves and recognize them with a small award as a teaser to then something bigger for next year that we could celebrate on Earth Day. We talked about venues. We have to probably look at a town facility. Southwood Park was mentioned as an option. And anything outside of that, we'd probably have to look at additional funding. And then that leads into the budget. So the budget would be needed for the venue, the plaques themselves. A suggestion was made to use some sort of recycled or reusable materials for the plaques. So we'll look into that. Advertising. And then if we did anything more formal, they'd need some budget for food and beverages, other things like that. So again, depending on which route we want to take, informal or formal, would depend on the budget. And Sarah does have some budget for anything informal that we do. And then in the additional items, I was wondering if we could maybe incorporate the tree planting into this type of award. So as well as receiving a plaque or a certificate or whatever it may be, maybe the recipient of the award can have a tree planted as part of their reward. So it doesn't need to be named or anything, but might be a nice idea just to link the two subcommittees together and use it as an excuse to plant some trees as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything we discussed. Yeah, any feedback?
Thank you, Haley. I know Councillor Bothwell had some thoughts, so why don't you kick it off, Councillor Bothwell? You had some thoughts. I think you sent out an email.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, great job, Haley and committee. I was just really impressed with the amount of work you guys covered in one short meeting. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Really, if I could have, I would have. I think that it's ambitious. I don't know if, when we look at budgets and funding, we know we don't have one. It'll be interesting to hear where Sarah or Trevor think we can, where we can pull a few funds from to support this. It's an important initiative. I'd like to also think that if there's opportunities for grants, that we look at ways to seek those out, and whether we do a subcommittee or something, because I know staff are stretched to reach out to look at grant options, not just in acknowledging these different categories, but to help fund some of the initiatives we do. The Earth Day seemed good timing. I think that it's a little quick to try to put something in place for the fall, and I think Parks and Rec is doing their civic recognition right now. I don't know if the Garden Club does theirs. We want to watch that we don't get overwhelmed with too many types of recognitions at the same time. So I like the idea of Earth Day. I like the idea of Earth Week and trying to time it in there, and then moving with some teasers forward. I mentioned Southward Park, but as we get into 2022, we're getting ready for the Canada Summer Games. So I don't know if that's going to put some strain on venues as well. Where I just want to ask Haley and the committee what you're thinking the next steps are and what the priorities are to move this forward. If you could help just answer that, that would be great. Thank you.
I think basically we just need to make a decision on if we want something more formal in the spring of next year. Then I guess we can get back together as a subcommittee and figure out, all the details of venue and budgets and everything. But if we're doing something more informal now, then probably the next step would just be to start researching within those categories, any businesses that are part of the Climate Smart program, or, if anyone knows of anyone that's done anything recently during the COVID lockdown, even if it's something the youth have put together. I've seen those, the rocks, and it's not necessarily, an environmental initiative, but there must be something similar to the arts programs like that kids have been doing to pass the time and to do some good. So yeah, I think just if we're going to go the informal route, then just to start researching what people have been doing in Grimsby.
To add to Haley's comments about where this goes from here, we're looking for input regarding the timing, regarding informal or formal categories. We have information from Sarah, which I think, Haley, you got that as well. And I don't think it's ready to go forward to council for any approval or any input. I suspect that we as a group have probably another meeting or two to fine tune this based on the input we get today. I know Bruce had some input. He thought this was a good idea. He thought it was a good idea to involve more than just one category, that it be fairly broad, so we engage more of the community than just, oh, I don't know, people that are government or something like that, but you know, just normal businesses, commercial restaurants. Sorry to say that Opa is closed now. That's the Greek restaurant that Haley references in her notes that use recycled materials. Anyway, you didn't want to hear that. So I think as a member of that group, I think we'd like to get input from you today, and then subject to what Haley has to say, maybe the group meets at least once more and fine tunes this and gets it down to some manageable package that focuses on what we really want to do.
I see Erin's got her hand up, Carl.
Yeah, I'm just trying to click on to unmute. Erin.
Sorry I missed that group meeting, guys. I really wanted to be there. I just have a quick question. Haley, you mentioned like research, whether we go with informal or formal, you mentioned researching like the different people or groups or individuals that have been doing stuff. Is that the way we would be doing it, where we're researching it as a committee, or would there be some kind of nomination form that like the general population could find on, say, our social media outlets or like the town website, that they could nominate someone? Because there's going to be people we have no idea that are out there doing great things. So I'm just curious as to how did you guys discuss the process of finding the recipients of these awards?
We only discussed the process of finding the recipients of the awards for the formal awards. So for the informal, we didn't actually go into details of that. It was just an option as an idea of how we could lead up to maybe the formal ones in the spring. But yeah, we could do it that way too, where we request people to be nominated. I guess there's just a couple that we already know of that we could maybe start with and use that as an example to request other nominations to come in or something.
Yeah, I would just want to make sure that the process is like equitable for all any, you know, Grimsby organization, business, or individual to have a chance at it, right? Not just someone we might happen to know about, right?
Yeah, and with the two different levels of awards that we were looking at, the environmental award was more of the bigger events that I guess would be for the spring, and then maybe the environmental star is what we give out to these informal teasers.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Sorry, Carl, I'm just gonna add on to Erin and Kaylee's comment there, if you don't mind. Can we get Trevor and Sarah to use the Facebook and do some shout outs? And maybe if the committee finds those teaser businesses or people or things in the community that come to our attention that we bring it forward to the committee or to the chair, and then we get Sarah and Trevor to post a, woo, you know, our environmental star from Green Committee to this business or this community or this person, and we do some media outreach that way. And whether we can get the town's website to actually say that we have a Grimsby Green Committee and actually maybe be able to post on the newsreel or somewhere on the front page or somehow using those tools that we have. I don't know. That's just an idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to also add on that, like we could use that to also gain, like if we put out a shout out and a star, say we could always put out a question to the general public and say, know of anyone else who's doing great things for the environment, email us at or whatever, and have an email address specifically for the awards. And that way we can get that input via you know, a general inbox and through the social media outlets.
I think we should have a Facebook presence. I assume the town's on Facebook, and I don't know, can we get on that as a subcategory, or do we need our own Facebook presence? I'm not.
Trevor can probably pop in. I was thinking that town of Grimsby, like Sarah uses the town of Grimsby Parks and Rec, and you guys post all the time. All we just have to do is identify that it's coming from Grimsby Green, but use the town of Grimsby Facebook page, Facebook site, right?
Yep. Yeah, we have a large reach with our Facebook. We've also seen a large increase in our Instagram traffic. So those are definitely tools that we have available. The website as well. We have the ability to post on our newsreel on the homepage of the town site, which sees high volume. So I think just from my perspective, from staff reading over the minutes here, low-hanging fruit would definitely be some sort of shout out. That's something that could be rolled out once you decide on, you know, what the criteria might be for a shout out. Something we could roll out extremely quickly with little to no budget. So that's definitely something we could support. That's, you know, that's heavy communication based. I think it's a great idea. We could even have a form built on the website to say, you know, nominate a business that is, you know, showing green initiative or showing local leadership, environmental stewardship. That's something that could be done relatively easily. And then whether those come to the committee for approval or discussion and then are posted, you could even look at doing a bit of kind of a brand behind it when it goes on Facebook. Maybe it has I don't know, a green leaf or you know, the name of the committee or something that's very identifiable, so that as we're posting them over the course of time, people know what to look for, like, oh, this is a shout out related to this initiative. And I think from there, that could be a good foundation maybe to build into the more formal awards that you had mentioned. I think just having done civic recognition awards myself, it's definitely a big but worthy undertaking. You do need a council policy. You want to make sure it's equitable. You have a nomination period. You're going to need a healthy budget to do an in-person ceremony if you want to have refreshments, that type of thing. But one possibility I'll just throw out there, we're just doing civic recognition right now, so it'll be another 2 years, which would fall outside the term of this committee. But perhaps even having a local environmental stewardship flow or a subcategory within civic recognition could be a way to kind of save on resources and still make sure that recognition is done instead of having a completely separate program. So that's certainly something that we could look at integrating, and that way, you know, the town's already investing quite a bit of staff time and resources in that initiative, and we can make sure that I think these are really great categories could be highlighted in that as well.
Any other ideas? I should point out as well that I have been approached by, I think her name is Sharon Porter, to help with some of the messaging from this committee. I'm not too familiar with what she does, but she has volunteered to help us. Does anybody know what Sharon Porter's strengths are?
She's really good in design in communications and social media design. She did the setup and all the paperwork and brochures and stuff for the community gardens initiative that was rolled out. Very well done. So I think maybe I think she might be just offering, if we want to do a logo, like Trevor says, we want an identity. She did the logo and identity, I think, for the community gardens. So maybe that's something that if the committee is open to it, having her just present the committee with some suggested logo branding ideas for Grimsby Green. I know we could do it ourselves, and I know we probably got strength on our own committee. So that's a thought. If she's offering, I mean, we could ask her just to throw some stuff out at the committee, Carl.
Okay, so would it be okay if I contacted her and perhaps she can attend the next meeting of our ad hoc committee? Do I need council's approval for that, or?
Well, I think we can get our own, I think the idea of having a logo and identity and a brand was something we all talked about initially when the committee was formed and struck. I just don't know if the committee, and this might be something where the committee members want to speak out if they feel that they want to have control over that, or we want to just have a community member bring some ideas forward and then we can refine it.
Just to add, Sharon was heavily involved in setting this committee up itself. And so I know that she already has some really good ideas for the design and for the logo and everything from the beginning when we were discussing it. And she's really good at what she does. So I'd definitely be happy with her just taking that project on and providing us with something.
So I would support Carl reaching out to Sharon to ask her to come back to the committee either in September or October with the branding ideas and the logo ideas. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels about that.
I would agree with that.
Excuse me, I'm going to suggest that Haley, that we need to have another meeting before the end of September. We've got 6 or 7 weeks until our next meeting, so we've got lots of time, and maybe we'll get better attendance at our next ad hoc committee meeting. Maybe it could be just after Labor Day. I'll leave it to you to set it up. I'm going to invite Sharon to come to that meeting, and I think she's already got some ideas. I know she's been communicating with Sarah, and I think that communication is at least a year old. So maybe she's got some ideas. She's got some talents that we could use. And I think we need to take what the group has done, what you've done, and try to distill it down to something manageable for starters.
Okay, yep, sounds good.
Anybody have any other comments they want to make? Peter, do I need a resolution that I guess to the effect that the report by Haley Pankhurst be received for information and that the matter be considered again at the September meeting of the committee? Something to that effect? Is Peter still with us? Okay, I'll ask Trevor then. Okay, I'll make that as a motion.
I say I'll have to defer that one to Peter.
I can't hear him. Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Haley. Any further discussion? Peter.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Now I can, yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, I do agree with you. I think a resolution would be required. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. So the next item on our agenda is commemorative tree program tags. I didn't put this on the agenda. Can I know who put it on the agenda? Peter?
Through you, Chair, no, it was not me. Were you suggesting I put it on the agenda, or?
Well, yeah, you sent me the agenda and I didn't put it on there.
Oh, yeah, sorry, through you, Chair. It was, I believe Maria had produced the agenda. I don't know if Trevor has any knowledge of the background on the item, but no, I didn't prepare the agenda.
I can speak to it the best that I can. We do have a commemorative tree program in town. People are able to basically sponsor and cover a partial cost of the tree and have a tag issued alongside it. My guess that what this is related to is the tags usually are, I believe, hung around the tree with a piece of wire. And as a tree grows, it gets destroyed and lost. So I'm wondering perhaps if Sarah was looking for feedback on possible alternative ways of recognizing, those who make a contribution, whether that be in the memory of or of somebody, or perhaps I think as Haley suggested, whether that's part of a future award. How do you adequately recognize somebody that is satisfies good green standards and making sure it's environmentally friendly, but also sustainable and stays in place for the length of time that you expect it to last. So I'm not sure if that's just something that was left up for discussion.
Through you, Chair. I believe, Trevor, that I did raise this with Sarah when it came up either at council or committee of the whole, or at this last meeting, that was an issue with the tags and the quality of the printing on the tags being poor and falling off. So I'd like to refer this back to staff actually to come back with suggestions on better quality tags or identifiers for in memoriams on the trees, because the trees cost $215 or something, 265, I can't remember, dollars to do an in memoriam tree. So I think it's important that people want to see that statement or name in memory of. And I don't think a piece of paper or just taking something away is what they're looking for. So she was talking about something at the base of the tree, but I know that's much more expensive. And then you've got issues on grass cutting and maintenance around the base of the tree. But I think if staff could look at what other municipalities are doing and come back with alternatives for outdoor low maintenance tagging, in memoriam tagging. So yeah, I think it's got to go back to staff to come up with some ideas as to what types of tags are suitable. I see Henry.
To you, Mr. Chair. Great comment, Councillor Bothwell. One of the things, I did a little bit of research on this just because it came up at last meeting. You're right, a lot of municipalities struggle with this. I think Oakville does something with a brass tag. It was very expensive, a brass plaque. And I think if you stop, you have to pay an annual fee to maintain it. If you don't pay it, they pull it out of the ground. That's not what we want to do. I know some of the, when I worked in St. Catharines, it was always an issue too. Maybe it's, since we're struggling with the physical aspect of this, maybe it's time to think about electronically. Maybe we use GIS and have it plotted electronically, and then in the park have a QR code that you can scan with your phone, and then you can actually, I know it's kind of out there, but maybe that's the next step of this, is that most people got a smartphone with a GPS, and maybe we take it to that next level. Instead of, it's more sustainable, and it's just for optics, and it's more sustainable for the future as well. And then people can even go online to the town's website and find their tree in a park. It's just, maybe the technology's not there, but maybe it's that time that we start thinking about it in a different way.
I just want to say, Henry, I love that idea. Have you ever been to Queen's Lawn Cemetery? And when you said about finding a plot or finding through GIS, I had them give me coordinates of where a certain person was buried. That is a huge cemetery. Okay.
Yep.
And I was trying to, based on the mapping, try to find this particular plot, and it was a nightmare. But we've got 4 words now, right? 2, right? So,
Yeah.
but I love that idea. I think that's neat. Other than we still have the traditional people. How do we handle the ones that still want a traditional way of recognizing, and they want something that they can see? There's the new generation that's great with that. And then there's the ones that perhaps want to look at a more traditional method. How do you merge those two?
Maybe the more traditional method would be to have them pay a little bit more of a fee or an annual maintenance fee, because there's additional maintenance associated with it. And then you offer a 2-tiered type of system. Both of them would be captured electronically, but one would be captured physically as well.
Love it. Great idea. Thank you.
Any other comments?
That's probably a great way to start the inventory going as well, by doing it electronically and putting it into GIS, especially if it's a new tree.
Right. Okay, I think Councillor Bothwell indicated that that was to be a staff report.
Yeah, no, Henry's offered some suggestions. So can we make it that staff take back the suggestions from committee and prepare a report with recommendations?
Okay. Moved by Councillor Bothwell. To that effect. Seconder. Henry. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. I think that brings us to item 11, which is new business. Does anybody have any other business that is new?
Sorry, Carl, I'm doing a lot of talking tonight, and I'm sorry for jumping in all the time without getting permission first. I just wanted, under new business, to let the committee know that at the last committee of the whole meeting on August the 3rd, the NPCA provided correspondence on increasing the pollinator option. So there's a huge motion anyway in the correspondence from NPCA, and it's supporting the provision of native pollinator habitat with specialized native plant species through future development and redevelopment projects, and that the NPCA partner with municipalities be requested to advance the use of native pollinator plant species to provide pollinator habitat through projects on their own lands, as well as through planning and development processes. And that the governments of Ontario and Canada be requested to adopt a plan of action for properties within their control to protect pollinators and plant native pollinator species, and entrench this priority with the appropriate legislation and circulation of NPCA jurisdiction, federal, provincial, political representatives. I just want to let the committee know that I had that motion by NPCA endorsed by council at the August 3rd meeting, as well as I made an effort to request that planning staff do work that into the pre-consultation agreements or work it into the development applications to move those initiatives forward. So I think what I'm going to do is, because we've endorsed that, and it is requesting that the municipalities on our own lands through planning and development look at those. This ties into the grass cutting initiative. And I think that where we find we're not going to cut the grass, maybe we look at restoring some pollinator habitat. So just want to keep this on the radar of this committee, that it was endorsed on August 3rd, and that I think we need to do some follow-up with the town to find out how effective and what strategies the town has taken to move forward on that endorsement over the next year. So I just want to put that on the radar for your information. Thank you.
Thank you. Other new business? Okay, then I want to talk about the next meeting. And as you can see, we have already 3 or 4 items that are going to be on the agenda in September. So we know about those. And what I want to do is to have a process where things get included in the agenda. Lesson to be learned, it's very difficult to have a meeting in the summertime. We only had 3 people at each of our ad hoc subcommittee meetings. But we had to have a meeting. We're in the time of the COVID. We've lost a lot of time because of COVID. So we wanted to keep going during the summertime, but the lesson to be learned is very difficult to get input from people. So here we are heading into September. I guess Peter's our new clerk for this committee. And as you can tell, we weren't very coordinated in terms of the agenda that we put together. So I read the terms of reference. Apparently the agenda is going to get put together by myself and Peter on the Friday before the Wednesday of the meeting. So I would like to encourage you to send me as much of information that you want to discuss at the next meeting so we can incorporate it into the agenda, and then it's your agenda as opposed to Sarah's agenda or Trevor's agenda or Peter's agenda. It's all of our agenda, and hopefully we'll address the issues that you find interesting. So I would like to encourage you to no later than say the Friday before the meeting, preferably a few days before that, to send me any articles, any information that catches your attention that you think the committee should look into. And then hopefully we can have an agenda where we have everybody in attendance that is interested in that item, and the items are of significance to you and of your interest. So that's all I have to say. Are there any further comments, discussions, points anybody wants to make? No? Well, then I thank you for joining us today, and I will see the members of the recognition ad hoc committee sometime before our next meeting, and I'll see you at our next meeting at the end of September. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care.